The gentleman from Lynchburg, Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege, sir.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I sat in this desk last Wednesday evening and listened to our governor and his State of the Commonwealth address. And he, in his usual enthusiastic exuberance, spoke to 561 new economic development projects, 88,400 new jobs created in the last 2 years, $9.27 billion in new capital investment. And we're just starting, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we work pretty hard here, and every member in this body is a citizen legislature, and we cherish our time at home. So I got home this weekend to recharge with my family, our businesses, and I try to reconnect with our community. Mr. Speaker, yesterday morning's paper in my hometown, News in Advance, front page, above the fold, and then 2 full pages on the inside of this newspaper refer to a deal that points to needed reform. This article was written by a writer in the Roanoke Times, and he wrote it and spoke to it quite well, so I will read his words, Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence, sir. In November of 2014, under a white frame tent, state and local leaders announced a 10% increase in jobs in Appomattox County, each paying $100 a week more than the average area wage. All of those new paychecks, the public was told, were spawned by the activity of Virginia's governor during a trade mission to Asia the month before. Terry McAuliffe closed a deal with a Chinese business enterprise planning to invest in Appomattox, a town without an interstate or economic hope after furniture and textile industry layoffs. Mr. Speaker, this was transformational news for a community of 15,000 folks. Just think about it. 349 new jobs paying an average of $32,000 a year would be filled at a new $113 million factory using an empty furniture plant and Chinese ingenuity in industrial ceramics. All the state had to do was write a check, helping with the down payment on the company's much larger investment pledge. Or so the officials thought. This month, Mr. Speaker, 14 months since that tent ceremony, a gate shutters the entrance road at the furniture plant that Lindenberg Industry bought but never used. The company is without its first employee and behind on paying its taxes, water service fees, and a contractor's tab for partial renovations of the factory office. On December the 8th, Virginia declared the project dead due to a lack of activity at the site, a foreclosure action against the facility, unpaid bills to contractors exceeding $450,000, and the lost confidence in the company's expansion plan. And on December the 15th, Mr. Speaker, that property was sold at an auction. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I am concerned about what I read in my local newspaper, and just as the gentleman from Campbell, Delegate Ferris, who represents this area and does it admirably. This was billed as a major economic development project. This would have had tremendous positive impact on our community. The details of how this project was developed, vetted, and executed are very concerning to me, Mr. Speaker, and they should be to each and every member who can hear my voice. There is clearly a lack of checks and balances in this process. There's a lack of attention to detail. There clearly are gaps in the way that this economic development project, one of 561 statewide, has unfolded. Mr. Speaker, the governor has said loudly and clearly and repeatedly, economic development is a priority, one of his top priorities, and I stand united with him, sir, in that concern. We all need jobs for our communities, for our constituents. We continue to labor under lingering recessionary process. His budget calls for major new investments on top of significant resource changes over the recent years. But, Mr. Speaker, these are our taxpayer dollars. We must be strategic, targeted, and smart in how we invest them. We must carefully scrutinize this deal and the entire process around it. What went wrong? What can be done to prevent this in the future with the other 560 projects that have been announced? We must carefully scrutinize all of our economic development spending. Are we getting the biggest bang for our buck? Are we wisely using our taxpayer resources? Mr. Speaker, I shared this article with Chairman Jones earlier, and I was very pleased to see that he'd already been briefed on it. In fact, he's been preparing an inquiry into each of these economic development projects for several weeks now. I was very pleased to hear that we are already preparing to look closely at this and every one of these projects as we develop the budget. Mr. Speaker, I close with this. Our efforts over the next several weeks have to be centered on trust. It is fundamentally what the people are crying out for, Mr. Speaker. I hope and pray there will be no more false hopes to other communities on these other 560 projects. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.